late 20th century, a unique trend emerged in television programming. Popular live-action series were reimagined as animated shows for the Saturday morning cartoon lineup. This phenomena saw beloved characters and storylines from primetime television transformed into animated adventures, captivating younger audiences and extending the franchise's reach. This trend not only provided fresh content for younger viewers, but also allowed networks to capitalize on the existing fan bases. The animated adaptations often introduced fantastical elements that were challenging to portray in live action, showcasing the creative possibilities of animation. In this video, we're going to jump into yet more live action television shows that were turned into Saturday morning entertainment. Because the Saturday morning experience tapered off at the end of the 1980s due mostly to cable television, we're going to stick to the decades of the 1970s and 1980s. Star Trek, the animated series, is an American animated science fiction television series created by Gene Roddenberry. It originally aired simply under the title Star Trek, subtitled Created by Gene Roddenberry, on Saturday mornings from September 8th, 1973 to October 12th of 1974 on NBC, spanning 22 episodes over 2 seasons. The second series in the Star Trek franchise features mostly the same characters as Star Trek, the original series. Set in the 23rd century, the series follows the further adventures of the starship USS Enterprise as it explores the galaxy. After the cancellation of the original series in 1969, the live-action show proved popular in syndication and generated significant fan enthusiasm. This resulted in Roddenberry's decision to continue the series in animated form. Much of the original cast returned to provide voices for their characters. Series writers David Gerard and D.C. Fontana characterized the animated series as effectively a fourth season of the original series. After the conclusion of the animated series, the adventures of the characters continued in live-action theatrical films, beginning with the 1979 film Star Trek, the motion picture. The animated series was critically acclaimed and was the first Star Trek series to win an Emmy Award when its second season received the 1975 Emmy for Outstanding Entertainment in a Children's Series. Star Trek, the animated series, is set in the 23rd century in the Star Trek universe, in which Earth is part of the multi-species United Federation of Planets. The Federation's military and exploration division, Starfleet, operates a fleet of starships that travel the galaxy, establishing contact with alien races. It follows the adventures of the Starfleet vessel USS Enterprise under the command of James T. Kirk as it explores the Milky Way galaxy. Louis Scheimer of Filmation was in talks with Star Trek producer Paramount Television, TV network NBC, and creator Gene Roddenberry to create an animated spin-off series while the original series was still on air during its third season. Paramount's director of special programming Philip Mayer and Filmation writer-animator Don Christensen worked together to create a proposal for a series that would target a young audience and have an educational spin. The main cast of Star Trek, the original series, would train the teenage crew of a ship called Excalibur about space exploration. The new teenage crew included a Vulcan named Steve, an African-American boy named Bob, and a Chinese boy named Stick. Due to the bitter relationship between Roddenberry and Paramount at the time, however, Scheimer was not able to get the two parties talking to each other in order to agree on a deal for several years. During this time, the project in its original form was phased out. A deal was finally reached in early 1973 and publicly announced in early March of 1973. Because of NBC's strong interest in the series, Roddenberry and Filmation were allotted very generous terms, a guaranteed minimum of 2 seasons with a combined 22 episodes, a budget of $75,000, that's equivalent to $514,768 in 2023 dollars, and that's per episode, and full creative control in Gene Roddenberry's hands. Roddenberry and Filmation agreed that the series should be for all ages rather than the children-oriented approach of the original proposal, and at Roddenberry's suggestion, the original series script editor D.C. Fontana was hired as the series story editor and associate producer. Despite the meager payment for writers, $1,300 per script with no residuals. That's the equivalent of $8,923 in 2023 numbers. But the opportunity to write a Star Trek episode without the special effect limitation of live action proved appealing, and many of the original series writers joined the staff. Fontana steered the series away from the romantic and sexual elements of the original Star Trek series, as she felt children would not be interested in them, and she wanted the animated series to appeal to children as well as adults. The series writing benefited from a Writers Guild of America East strike in 1973, which did not apply to animation. A few episodes were written by well-known science fiction authors. More Tribbles, More Troubles was written by David Gerrold as a sequel to his episode The Trouble with Tribbles from the original series. Here, Siriano Jones is rescued from the Klingons, bringing with him his genetically altered breed of Tribbles, which do not reproduce but do grow extremely large. It is later discovered that these are really clusters of Tribbles who function as a single Tribble, and it is decided that the large numbers of smaller Tribbles are preferable to the larger ones. The Klingons, because of their hatred of Tribbles, are eager to get Jones back because he stole a creature they created, a predator called a Glommer that feeds on Tribbles. Yesteryear is a time travel episode in which Mr. Spock uses the Guardian of Forever, a time gateway from the original series episode The City of the Edge of Forever, to travel back to his own childhood. This is the only animated Trek episode written by the original series and later Next Generation writer D.C. Fontana. This was the first actual appearance of Spock's pet, Shylot. Saylot? How do you say that, Trek fans? First mentioned in Journey to Babel and finally named Ai Chaya in this episode. One element from yesteryear that has become canonical by depiction within Star Trek, the original series, is the Vulcan city of Shikar, depicted in a background scene wherein Kirk, Spock, and McCoy walk across a natural stone bridge, first depicted in Star Trek III, The Search for Spock, and the remastered Amok Time. Elements of Spock's childhood from yesteryear are also referenced in the Star Trek The Next Generation episode Unification, as well as the 2009 Star Trek feature film. Larry Niven's The Slaver Weapon, adapted from his own short story, The Soft Weapon. It includes some elements from his known space mythos, such as the Zinti and the Slavers. Is it Kazinti and the Slavers, or is the K silent? What do you think, Trek fans? You'll let me know, I'm sure. This is the only Kirk-era television or movie story in which Kirk did not appear. This episode is also the only animated one in which characters are shown dying or being killed. The animated series featured most of the original cast, voicing their characters. The major exception was the character of Pavel Chekhov, portrayed by Walter Koenig, who did not appear in the series because the series budget could not afford the complete cast. He was replaced by Lieutenant Erix, whose Edosian species had 3 arms and 3 legs. Lieutenant Maress, a female Cation, sometimes stood in for Uhura as communications officer. Besides performing their characters, Montgomery Scott and Christine Chappell, James Doohan, and Michelle Barrett also performed the voices of Erix and Maress, respectively. Barrett also voiced various other characters in the main computer. Initially, Filmation was only going to use the voices of William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, and DeForest Kelley. Doohan and Barrett would also perform the voices of Sulu and Uhura. Reportedly, when Nimoy arrived at the initial recording session for the first few episodes, he immediately noticed the absence of George Takei and Nichelle Nichols. When informed they had not been hired for the series due to budgetary reasons, Nimoy refused to voice Spock unless Takei and Nichols were added to the cast, stating that Sulu and Uhura were proof of the ethnic diversity of the 23rd century and should not be recast. Nimoy also took this stand as a matter of principle, as he knew of the financial troubles many of his Star Trek co-stars had experienced over cancellation of the series. According to Scheimer, when Nimoy pointed out that the casting would cut the only 2 minority actors from the series, we were horrified at our unintended slight, made all the worse because we were the one studio who had been championing diversity in its output. Takei and Nichols were quickly hired, and the recording session was rescheduled. Koenig was not forgotten, as Filmation were able to assuage Nimoy's complaints on his account by buying a script for Koenig for 1 episode, The Infinite Vulcan. Voice recording began in June of 1973, with the first 3 episodes recorded as an ensemble, all the voice actors for the episode in the room at the same time. Later episodes used a now more typical model of recording the voice actors separately to work around their other commitments. William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, who were both touring in plays at the time, recorded their lines in whatever city they happened to be performing in and had the tapes shipped to the studio. Doohan and Barrett, besides providing the voices of their original series characters and newcomers Erix and Maress, performed virtually all of the guest star characters in the series, with exceptions such as Sarek, Cyrano Jones, and Harry Mudd, who were performed by Mark Leonard, Stanley Addams, and Roger C. Carmel, respectively, the original actors from the original series. Other guest voice actors included Ed Bishop, who voiced Megan Prosecutor in The Magics of Megastu, and Ted Knight, who voiced Carter Winston in The Survivor. Nichelle Nichols performed character voices in addition to Uhura in several episodes, including The Time Trap and The Lorelei Signal. Because of an unusual interpretation of the FCC Fairness Doctrine, the premiere episode was not aired in the Los Angeles market. Takei was political candidate for a seat on the city council, and the KNBC feared that allowing his voiceover work to be heard would force the station to provide equal time for Takei's opponents. Similar to most animated series of the era, the 22 episodes of the TSA were spread out over 2 brief seasons, with copious reruns of each episode. The director of the first season, which included 16 episodes, was Hale Sutherland, and Bill Reed directed the 6 episodes of the second season, though the first 4 episodes of season 2 erroneously credit Sutherland. Don Christensen, creator of the original proposal, remained involved as art director. Other animation staff included Reuben Timmons, who oversaw all shots involving the Enterprise, and a young Bob Klein. The animators rotoscoped the animations for the Enterprise and the original cast from 35mm film footage of the original series. The chevrons were enlarged to make them easier to animate, but otherwise the crew's uniforms were unaltered from the original series. Due to the hiring of nearly the entire regular cast of the original show, little money was left in the budget for the animation, so Filmation cut costs by using stock footage and shortcuts such as having a character put a hand to their mouth while speaking, thus eliminating the need to animate the lips and silhouette characters in action. Star Trek, the animated series, was the only Star Trek series not to be produced with a cold opener, a teaser, instead starting directly with the title credits sequence. However, some overseas versions of the original live-action series, such as those aired by the BBC in the United Kingdom in the 1960s and 1970s, were edited to run the teaser after the credits. Well, that doesn't make any goddamn sense, does it? Oh well. The animated series dispensed with the original series theme music composed by Alexander Courage in favor of a new theme credited to Yvette Blaze and Jeff Michael, but actually written by Filmation composer Ray Ellis. Ellis used the pseudonym Yvette Blaze, the maiden name of his wife, due to complications with the royalties and publishing companies, while Jeff Michael is a pseudonym for producer Norm Prescott, who received a synonymous credit and cut of the royalties on all the Filmation's music as part of a standard deal for the time. Writing on Facebook's Starlog magazine official page in March of 2021, Gerald revealed that the reason for this was a long-standing feud between Courage and Roddenberry over residual payments for airing of Star Trek, the original series episodes, using their original theme. When Courage turned in the original music, Roddenberry added his own lyrics to it, thereby depriving Courage of half his residuals. Courage never forgave Roddenberry and refused to give permission for the reuse of the theme. That's why the new music was written for the animated series, again for the movies. You know, the more I hear about Gene Roddenberry and the more stories I read about him, he really seems like a really big prick. Anyways, through both seasons, Star Trek the Animated Series faced the reverse situation of the original series with regard to its popularity. Ratings were high, but skewed away from the young children which Saturday morning advertisers were trying to reach, being more popular with adults and older children. IGN named Star Trek the Animated Series the 96th best animated series. They declared that although the series suffered from technical limitations, its format allowed for writers far greater freedom and creativity than was possible in the original live-action series. In an LA Times listing that included each Star Trek film and TV series separately, the animated series was ranked 11th. The comic Star Trek vs. Transformers was inspired by the animated series and takes place in a similar universe. CBR ranked all 31 seasons of Star Trek television shows, placed season 1 of the TSA as the 23rd and season 2 at 24. Similarly to IGN, they commented that the animation is definitely limited by today's standards, but the idea of an animated Star Trek makes perfect sense, since concerns over budget and scope would be very different. Although only 2 seasons long, we were given some memorable moments. MoviePhone ranked the animated series the 7th best out of 7 Star Trek TV series. In the original Star Trek series, the main character was given the name James T. Kirk. It was not until the animated series that writer David Gerrold expanded on the T, establishing Kirk's middle name as Tiberius. By coincidence, on Gene Roddenberry's first series, The Lieutenant, the principal character was William Tiberius Rice. According According to Gerald, he had been influenced by I. Claudius and had approached Roddenberry with his choice of middle name, who agreed. Gerald did not learn about the earlier use of the name until 2014. The animated series introduced a three-armed, three-legged alien member of the bridge crew with a long neck named Erix and a cat-like alien crew member named Mares, according to Roddenberry. Budget limitations would have made it impossible for either alien species to appear in a live-action series of the time. The USS Enterprise in this series, while supposedly the same ship as from the original series, had a holodeck similar to the one later seen in Star Trek The Next Generation, which was set about 80 years later. It only appeared once in Chuck Menville's The Practical Joker and was known as the Rec Room. This feature was originally proposed for the original series, but was never used. A personal force field technology known as the life support belt was seen only in Star Trek The Animated Series. In addition, the supplying the wearer with appropriate atmosphere and environmental protection, it permitted the animators to simply draw the belt in yellow glow around the existing characters instead of having to redraw them with an environmental suit. A version of the life support belt later appeared in an early Star Trek The Next Generation novel, The Peacekeepers, where they were referred to as field effect suits. The episode The Lololay Signal provides a rare instance in early Star Trek in which the woman took a temporary command of the starship. Due to the male crew members being incapacitated, Uhura assumes command of the Enterprise from Scotty. Other instances occur on the first and last adventures filmed in the original series. The Cage, in which Number 1 took command after the abduction of Captain Christopher Pike, and Turnabout Intruder, in which Dr. Janice Lester took over the body of Captain Kirk and assumed command. The Lorelei Signal and the Infinite Vulcan, the latter written by Walter Koenig, are rare occurrences where Captain Kirk comes close to actually saying "Beam me up, Scotty," long erroneously believed to be a Star Trek catchphrase. When he commands "Beam us up, Scotty," Star Trek IV The Voyage Home arguably comes closer to it by having Kirk say, "Scotty, beam me up." An anti-pollution public service announcement was created for non-profit Keep America Beautiful, featuring Star Trek The Animated Series characters and original cast voices. In the ad, the Enterprise encounters the Rombian pollution belt. Sure. The ad ran during Saturday morning network programming during the series run. The complete series was first released in the United States on 11 volumes of VHS tapes in 1989. In the United Kingdom, CIC Video released the complete series on 7 volumes on PAL VHS in 1992. Although CIC Taft Australia negotiated an Australian release, they did not proceed with their plans. A box set, a complete series of Laserdisc, was released for the U.S. market in 1990, then re-released in 1997. A Region 1 DVD box set of the series was released on November 21st of 2006 and has since been released internationally for other regions. Each episode on CBS DVD Paramount Home Entertainment's complete series DVD release of Star Trek The Animated Series was presented in its original network television format and original air date order, uncut and unedited, and also remastered and restored in 1080 HD and full color with remastered and remixed 5.1 surround sound and restored original mono audio. It was also the last series of Paramount's Star Trek television franchise to be released on DVD. A Blu-ray release in HD was released as part of the Star Trek 50th Anniversary TV and movie collection in the United States on September 6th of 2016. A standalone Blu-ray release was also released on November 15th of 2016.
Our sensors indicate a huge whirling belt of alien matter approaching the Enterprise at warp 6.
Red alert, repeat, red alert. Activate view screen, Mr. Sulu.
What you're looking at, Captain, is the Rombian pollution belt, formed hundreds of years ago.
Wasn't it before people became aware of pollution and began pointing it out?
Exactly. Once enough people started pointing out pollution, the pollution stopped.
Yes, Mr. Spock. People finally got the point.
Crash landed, and 2 friendly Martians and their dog were stuck on a little planet. Now they've got special powers, and it makes some people wonder, but only Tim and Katie really know for sure that they're
My Favorite Martian is an American sitcom that aired on CBS from September 29th, 1963 to May 1st of 1966 for 107 episodes, and the show stars Ray Walston as Uncle Martin, the Martian, and Bill Bixby as Tim O'Hara. The first 2 seasons, totaling 75 episodes, were in black and white, and the 32 episodes of the third and final season were filmed in color. John L. Green created the central characters and developed the core format of the series, which was produced by Jack Chertok. A human appearing extraterrestrial in a one-man spaceship nearly collides at high altitudes with the U.S. Air Force's rocket plane, the North American X-15. The spaceship's pilot is a 450-year-old anthropologist from Mars. Tim O'Hara, a young newspaper reporter for the Los Angeles Sun, is on his way home from Edwards Air Force Base, where he had gone to report on the flight of the X-15. Returning home to Los Angeles, O'Hara spots the same silver spaceship coming down quickly, after which it crash lands nearby. Tim takes in the Martian, saying to other people that he is Tim's Uncle Martin. The Martian refuses to reveal any of his special traits to humans other than Tim, to avoid both publicity and human panic. Tim agrees to keep the Martian's Earth identity a secret while he attempts to repair his spaceship. Uncle Martin has various unusual powers. He can raise 2 retractable antennas from the back of his head and become invisible. He is telepathic and can read and influence minds. He can levitate objects with the motion of his index finger. He can communicate with animals, he can freeze people or objects, and he can speed himself and other people up to do any kind of work. Also an inventor, Uncle Martin builds several advanced devices, such as a time machine that transports Tim and the Martian to England in the Middle Ages and other times and places, such as St. Louis in 1849 in the early days of Hollywood, and brings Leonardo da Vinci and Jesse James into the present. Another device he builds is a molecular separator that can take apart the molecules of a physical object or rearrange them, making a squirrel into a human. Another device can take memories and store them in pill form to relearn them later. Other devices create temporary duplicates or levitate Martin and others without the need of his index finger. Tim and Uncle Martin live in a garage apartment owned by a congenial but scatterbrained landlady, Mrs. Laura Leigh Brown, a former Wave as revealed in the first episode of Season 1, who often shows up when not wanted. The Martian and she have an awkward romance from time to time, but Uncle Martin never gets serious for fear of his ultimately going home to Mars. She later dates a vain, cold-hearted, plainclothes police officer, Detective Bill Brennan, who dislikes Uncle Martin and is highly suspicious of him and his activities. Martin O'Hara's real name is actually Exegius 12½, revealed in the episode We Love You, Miss Pringle. It was heard again when his real nephew, Andromeda, played by a young actor Wayne Stamm, crash-landed on Earth late in the show's 3rd season. Andromeda, originally devised to bring younger viewers to the show, disappeared without explanation after this single episode and was not referred to again in the live-action series' 8 remaining episodes. Andromeda was, however, a regular on the later My Favorite Martians animated series. Andromeda had a single antenna, which Martin explained was because his baby antenna had fallen out and only one adult antenna had come in so far. Uncle Martin also reveals that on Mars he lives on Fulton Canal, which ultimately leads to comedic mix-ups and confusion with Canal Fulton, Ohio. In its first season, My Favorite Martian did very well in the Nielsen ratings, ranking at number 10. However, by the end of the 2nd season, the show had dipped to number 24. Still, the series was doing well enough to be renewed for a 3rd season. Ratings dipped even further in the 3rd season due to repetitive storylines involving Martin's time machine, and the series was canceled. An animated series, My Favorite Martians, was made by Filmation and was broadcast as part of the Saturday morning programming on CBS from September 8th of 1973 to December 22nd of 1973 for a total of 16 episodes. The series features Tim, Martin, Mrs. Brown, and Detective Brennan. Brennan is considerably different in this version. To appeal to a younger audience, Uncle Martin is joined by his Martian nephew named Andromeda, nicknamed Andy, who only has one antenna, and thus lesser powers than Uncle Martin, and did appear in one episode of the live-action series which was mentioned. The pair also have a Martian pet named Oki, sort of a bouncing sheepdog with antennae. Tim also had a niece of his own named Katie living with them. Brennan also had a teenage son named Brad living with him and a pet chimpanzee named Chump. None of the characters were voiced by the original actors. Bixby was at the time committed to his latest project, The Magician, and Woolston tried to distance himself from the role. As a result, Jonathan Harris voiced Martin, and Jane Webb voiced Mrs. Brown. The cartoon utilized a number of scripts from what would have been season 4 of the live-action show. As of early July 2013, Jack Chertok Television co-owned it, with the Chertok Company retaining all merchandising rights to the show. At least 2 VHS tape volumes were released of the cartoon series in 1989 by UAV. Distribution rights were held, as of April 2013, by Classic Media as part of their Filmation holdings.
Cities rising in the sky, freeway traffic jetting high. Future's here for us to see. It's 2200 AD. It's the Partridge Family, showing us how it's gonna be. The Partridge Family, loving it all and having a ball in 2200 AD.
Partridge Family, 2200 AD is an American science fiction Saturday morning animated series and a spin-off of the 1970 to 1974 ABC live-action sitcom The Partridge Family, produced by Hanna-Barbera Productions and Columbia Picture Television and broadcast on CBS from September 7th to December 21st of 1974, though it would air in reruns until March 8th of 1975. The band performed one of their pop hits in each episode. While in pre-production, Hanna-Barbera originally proposed an updated version of the Jetsons in which Elroy would be a teenager and Judy would have a steady job as an ace reporter. CBS, under the leadership of Fred Silverman, discarded the idea and decided to make an animated version of The Partridge Family instead. The Partridge Family has already been reoccurring characters on a previous Hanna-Barbera production, Goober and the Ghost Chasers. In this new iteration of the series, the Partridge Family is, without any explanation, living in a Jetsons-like futuristic environment in 2200 AD. The family's galaxy-famous musical act is notably more successful than in the live-action show, and they appear to manage themselves. The character of Reuben Kincaid is not a regular. Danny has a robotic dog named Orbit, and Keith and Laurie have 2 good friends that travel with the family, though they are not part of the musical act. Marion, a 2-tone green and blue Martian who can fly, and Vinny, a purple-haired Venetian with a distinct buzzing vocal tick. Danny Bonaducci, Suzanne Croft, and Brian Forster voiced their respective characters from the live-action series. Susan Day provided Laurie's voice for only 2 episodes before she was replaced by former Musketeer Sherry Albarani, who had voiced Alexandra for Hanna-Barbera's Josie and the Pussycats. Chuck McLennan served as both the speaking and singing voice of Keith Partridge instead of David Cassidy. Joanne Gerber voiced Shirley Partridge in place of Shirley Jones, while John Stephenson took over the role of Reuben Kincaid from Dave Madden in a few episodes in which he appears. Mickey DeLenz, a member of a previous made-for-television band, The Monkees, had various reoccurring roles in the series. One of his first voice-over roles. 16 half-hour episodes were produced for Partridge Family 2200 AD, which lasted half a season on CBS Saturday morning. In 1977-78, it was retitled The Partridge Family in Outer Space when episodes were serialized on the syndicated weekday series Fred Flintstone and Friends. Like many animated series created by Hanna-Barbera in the 1970s, the series contained a laugh track created by the studio. Due to its ties to the Partridge Family 2200 AD is one of the only 2 Hanna-Barbera produced series since HB's 1967 sale to Taft Broadcasting that are owned outright by Sony Pictures Television, whose predecessor Screen Gems produced the live-action series. Jeannie, an animated spin-off of I Dream of Jeannie, is the other. The copyrights to both animated series are currently held by CPT Holdings. In October October 2005, 2 restored episodes of the Partridge Family 2200 AD, My Son the Spaceball Star, and Car Trouble were included as bonuses on the Partridge Family, the complete first season DVD set. Technically, this all started with a comic strip. It's a slight technicality, as members of the television show are involved in this production. The Addams Family is an American animated sitcom adaptation of the Charles Addams single-panel comic for The New Yorker. This show was produced by Hanna-Barbera Productions for Saturday mornings in 1973 and was later rebroadcast the following season. Jackie Coogan and Ted Cassidy, who played Uncle Fester and Lurch, respectively, in the 1960s television series, returned in voiceover roles. The cast also included 10-year-old Jodie Foster, who performed the voice of Pugsley Addams. The show's theme music was completely different and had no lyrics or finger snapping, but retained a recognizable part of the 4-note score from the live-action series. The Addams Family consists of husband and wife Gomez and Morticia Addams, their children Wednesday and Pugsley, as well as Grandma, Uncle Fester, Thing, Cousin It, and their butler Lurch. The Addamses are a close-knit extended family with decidedly macabre interests and supernatural abilities. No explanation for their powers is explicitly given in the series. This series depicts the Addamses on a cross-country road trip exploring the United States in the Victorian-style creepy camper that resembles their mansion. Along the way, they stop off at various locations and venues. They inadvertently cause mayhem wherever they go due to their unusual interests and mannerisms, their willingness to trust those who probably shouldn't be trusted, although they do occasionally aid others who genuinely need help, and they're getting swept up in criminal schemes or problems without their knowledge. The Addams Family's first animated appearance was on the 3rd episode of the Hanna-Barbera's The New Scooby-Doo movie, Scooby Meets the Addams Family, aka Wednesday is Missing, which first aired on CBS Saturday morning on September 23rd of 1972. John Astin, Carolyn Jones, Jackie Coogan, and Ted Cassidy provided the voices for the respective Addams Family characters, while voice actors were used to voice Grandmama, Wednesday, Pugsley, and Cousin It. The episode details the Addams Family in a mystery with the Scooby-Doo gang. The Addams Family characters were drawn to the specifications of the original Charles Addams comics. In October of 2010, Warner Archives released the Addams Family The Complete Series on DVD in Region 1 as part of their Hanna-Barbera Classic Collection. This is a manufacturer-on-demand release available exclusively through Warner's online store and Amazon.com. The series is also available for purchase at the iTunes Store.
Hot dogging it up, right high on a curl. Not thinking about I'd be meeting a girl. Then wham, I land, but that fall wasn't all. In a bottle was a chick, only 2 inches tall. Out came Jeannie, wow, and Junior Jeannie, baboo. Jeannie.
Yes, master?
Jeannie is an American animated television series that originally aired for a 16-episode season on CBS from September 8th to December 22nd of 1973. It was produced by Hanna-Barbera in association with Screen Gems, and its founder, William Hanna and Joseph Barbera, are the executive producers. Despite being a spin-off of sorts of the television sitcom I Dream of Jeannie, Jeannie has little in common with its parent show. In this version, the title character is rescued on the beaches of Southern California by a high school student, Corey Anders. Jeannie is accompanied by Jeannie in training, Babu, and they become companions to Corey and his best friend, Henry Glob. Henry Glob? It's the best they could come up with. Both of whom also helped Jeannie and Babu adjust to their new home, as well as in life in Los Angeles. The series was marked toward a younger demographic than the live-action sitcom it was based on. Julie McWhirter replaces Barbara Eden in the lead role. In his first voice acting job, Mark Hamill plays Corey Anders and also sings the theme music. Babu is voiced by Joe Besser, who had a successful voice acting career at the time. Jeannie was shown as part of CBS's Saturday morning cartoon programming block, and episodes aired between 1973 and 1975. The show was also included on the Wheels series Fred Flintstone and Friends, and had crossovers with the Scooby-Doo franchise. Though a few retrospective reviews of Jeannie have been negative, it has gained popularity after Warner Brothers bought Hanna-Barbera and its properties in 1996, as it was one of the few series not to be owned by them, as Sony currently holds the rights along with the rest of the Jeannie franchise. It remains popular with the public and industry professionals, and has been recently distributed via two streaming services, Crackle and CTV Throwback. An episode can also be viewed at the UCLA Film and Television Archive. In Jeannie, high school student Corey Anders discovers Jeannie's bottle while surfing and draws the title character out of it. Corey becomes the master of Jeannie, and her apprentice Babu. Portrayed as a 16-year-old, Jeannie is shown as training the junior Jeannie Babu, who frequently causes trouble due to his inexperience with magic. Babu is characterized as having a habit of popping in at the most inopportune times. The pair become close friends and protectors to Corey, who is Jeannie's love interest. Episodes typically focus on Corey's attempts to hide Jeannie and Babu's true identities as he attends Center City High School, and Jeannie's difficulties with adjusting to life in 1970s California. Corey's storylines also include his friend Henry Glob. Other than Corey, Henry is the only other person aware of Jeannie's identity as a Jeannie. Other supporting characters include Corey's mom, Mrs. Anders, and a frenemy named S. Melvin Farthingale. The master of all Jeannies, known as the Great Haji, and Debbie S. Melvin is portrayed as a snobbish snoob who frequently sneaks around the Anders home due to his suspicions about Jeannie and Babu. Jeannie is an animated spin-off of the live-action television sitcom I Dream of Jeannie, although it has a substantially different plot than its parent show. In this version, Corey replaces astronaut Major Tony Nelson. While I Dream of Jeannie was a family show, it focused on 60s-style relationships, especially in its first season, the NASA Moon Project, and broad slapstick. The humor used for the animated Jeannie, more focused towards teenagers and children, is of the Archie comics nature, with themes of dating, school events, and friendship. Like the original series, Jeannie is emotionally attached to her assumed boyfriend and becomes jealous in the face of competition, a staple of teenage comics and sitcoms. Unlike the original series, Jeannie is depicted as younger and with red hair instead of blonde. She activates her magic by shaking her ponytail rather than blinking her eyes. Jeannie was a Hanna-Barbera production, with the company's founders, William Hanna and Joseph Barbera, serving as the show's executive producer. Charles August Nichols was the director, and Owaya Takamoto was the producer. I Dream of Jeannie creator Sidney Sheldon is not included in the credits for Jeannie, which the AV Club's Will Harris attributes to the extreme difference between the two shows. Hanna-Barbera had created Jeannie as a way to appeal to a younger demographic. The musical director was Hoyt Curtin, and music supervisor was Paul DeCorte, or DeCorte. Jeannie was a co-production between Hanna-Barbera and Columbia Pictures, as Columbia's Screen Gems television division was the owner of I Dream of Jeannie. Hanna-Barbera had a long association with Columbia and Screen Gems as they distributed their earlier shows, including The Flintstones and The Jetsons. However, the rights to all Hanna-Barbera properties were transferred to Warner Brothers after the studio purchased the company in 1966. Hanna-Barbera did not, however, animate the titles for the original I Dream of Jeannie. That was De Pate Freleng, but they did animate a variety of opening titles, including both Darren's for the Screen Gems Bewitched. Bob Hastings voiced Henry Glob, who was the animated counterpart of Bill Daly's Major Roger Haley character from the live-action TV series, while Joe Besser portrayed the comic foil Babu. Besser, a veteran actor of 40 years by 1973, had become active as a successful voice actor during the 1970s and 1980s, along with Jeannie. He also voiced regular characters in the television programs The Houndcats and Yogi Space Race. He had previously appeared in an I Dream of Jeannie episode alongside the members of the Three Stooges. Debbie, Mark, and Mrs. Anders are played by Arlene Galanka, Michael Bell, and Janet Waldo, respectively. Mrs. Anders is voiced by Jeannie Tyler in episode 11, The Blind Date, and Janet Waldo in episode 16, The Wish. John Stevenson and Tommy Cook voice Great Haji and S. Melvin Farthinghill, aka Smelvin, respectively. Sherry Elbarani, Julie Bennett, Don Mezek, and Jeannie Tyler provide additional voice acting for the series.
That you weren't there.
Just close your eyes and make believe, and you can be anywhere.
I like adventure.
I like romance.
I love great jokes.
Animal dance.
I've got my computer.
I can do hair.
I'll play the piano.
And I've got blue hair.
Is everything all right in here?
Yes, Jeannie. Muppet Babies, we make our dreams come true. Muppet Babies will do the same for you.
Jim Henson's Muppet Babies, commonly known by the shortened title Muppet Babies, is an American animated television series produced by Marvel Productions and Henson Associates. The show portrays toddler versions of the Muppets living together in a nursery under the care of a woman known as Nanny, involving the concepts of the power of imagination and creative problem solving. The show's main target group is for children aged 2 to 5. The idea of presenting the Muppets as children appeared in a dream sequence in Muppets Take Manhattan, released 2 months before Muppet Babies debuted. The idea was a success, and it transformed into a spin-off. The show aired from September 15th of 1984 to November 2nd of 1991 as part of the Saturday morning cartoons lineup on CBS. The show received universal acclaim for its animation, visuals, writing, humor, educational values, and appeal to younger and older audiences. It spawned successful merchandise and won 7 Daytime Emmy Awards, including 4 consecutive awards for Outstanding Animated Program, as well as a Humanitas Prize. Due to its popularity, the show remained on television in the United States for a decade. The rights are now held by the Walt Disney Company following the company's acquisition of the Muppets franchise. Outside the United States, the show was distributed by Walt Disney Television. A reboot of the series premiered on Disney Junior on March 23rd of 2018. The series stars Kermit the Frog, Miss Piggy, Fozzie Bear, Waka Waka, Animal, Scooter, Skeeter, Roif the dog, and Gonzo as toddlers. Supporting characters include Bunsen Honeydew, Beaker, and Camellia in the form of Gonzo's stuffed chick. In the final 2 seasons, Bean Bunny and Statler and Waldorf made regular appearances. Several Muppets made guest appearances, including Janice as an older preteen and Kermit's nephew Robin as a tadpole. The Muppet Babies live in a large nursery watched over by Nanny, who is seen from the neck down. The babies' imaginary games transition from the nursery into scenes that become real to the babies, such as outer space and the past. The fantasies have the babies interact with live-action backgrounds, old films and photos, engravings, and hand-drawn backgrounds. The babies use their imagination to have their own adventures based on everyday things and toys around them. They also use their imaginations to solve a problem. In post-credit scenes, the babies are doing something related to the episode's plot. Their activities, mostly Gonzo's, are interrupted by Animal, who crashes the scene in a comedic way and calls, "Go bye-bye, Animal, Animal." The idea for the show was created by Jim Henson and his staff, originating in Jim Henson's art department. During the creation of Sue Venning's Muppet Show Bill, Jim Henson suggested to include the Muppets as tiny little selves and afterwards as babies. The book was not changed, but the idea was described as charming. Afterwards, the staff, including Michael K. Frith, created character designs of the Muppets as toddlers. After Frith showed a sketch of Baby Piggy to Jim Henson, Henson decided to turn it into a line line of merchandise. Throughout 1983, several marketers featured prototype versions of the Muppet Babies on merchandise such as infant and toddler clothing, nursery decor, and diapers, while Jim Henson was developing toddler versions of the characters. On January 1st of 1984, the Muppet Babies were included in the comic strip adaptation of The Muppets. During production of The Muppets Take Manhattan, Miss Piggy original fantasy sequence was written on the screenplay. Because Henson was enthused about the Muppet Babies, he convinced Frank Oz to include them in the film, replacing the original fantasy sequence. Despite Oz's dislike of the idea, he thought that the idea was brilliant. Shortly afterwards, the art department asked the workshop to create models of the puppets of the Muppet Babies. The staff of the workshop favored the idea and decided to include them in the film. The scene was shot on August 28th of 1983. It is considered to be one of the most difficult scenes to shoot during production of the film, as the puppeteers had to perform the baby versions of the characters by using their stubby little limbs. The film was released on July 13th of 1984. The idea was a success and it received very favorable reviews from fans. At the same time, Baby Kermit and Baby Piggy plush toys were promoted by Pampers. A music video of Henson's self-directed I'm Gonna Always Love You, combined with scenes of the film and new footage, was created for MTV.
Well, this is the Muppets Rock video.
Oh, right. Jim,
this is not the film.
No, this is not the film. Jim...
Well, sort of.
This is a portion, right. Jim did a rock video with a few scenes from the film.
Yeah, we have a number in the film that is made up with the Muppet Babies. There's a number where they imagine what they would be like if they had known each other when they were kids. And so we made up a series of characters that were the Muppet Babies. And so the rock video uses a lot of that footage, and then, as you see, some more sort of normal rock video effects and things like that.
All right, let's see
fun.
this creation of Frank Oz and Jim Henson, the Muppets Rock video. Watch.
The song was remixed by John Benitez for the project. It was shot on April 10th and 11th of 1984. The set used for the music video was larger than the set used in the film. The video became an airplay hit and received a nomination for Best Achievement in Music Video in the VPA Monitor Awards in 1985. Additionally, Jim Henson received a nomination for Best Director for the video. Network executives and several others suggested Henson Associates to transform the Muppet Babies into a Saturday morning cartoon. The concept of the show was created on March 10th of 1984. On April 13th of 1984, CBS colleague Judy Price granted permission to Jim Henson and his staff for its proposal. Jim Henson was initially skeptical, as he originally stepped away from Saturday morning cartoons. However, he liked the idea a lot that he decided to create the show for something better. He visited every major studio in California, choosing to work with Marvel Productions after a meeting with Hank Sarian. For the core theme of the show, Henson and Marvel Productions agreed to implement the theme of the power of creativity, encouragement of imagination. Bob Richardson transferred from producing and directing the first season of Dungeons & Dragons to produce and direct the show, which needed help getting started. Scooter's twin sister, Skeeter, was exclusively created for the show to provide more feminine empowerment. Nanny was only seen from the neck down to represent the kid's view of an adult. The show had several cast members: Frank Welker, Laurie O'Brien, Greg Berg, Russie Taylor, Katie Lee, Howie Mandel, Dave Cowler, and Barbara Billingsley. By the third season, Howie Mandel left the show and his roles were given to Frank Welker as Baby Skeeter and Dave Collier as Baby Animal and Baby Bunsen. All the voices were recorded in various recording studios in Los Angeles. Henson and other puppeteers such as Frank Oz and Richard Hunt decided decided not to reprise their roles due to scheduling conflicts with their work on Sesame Street, Fraggle Rock, and any Muppet special. The team decided to set up auditions for an amount of voice casts that could voice the characters for the series. According to Laurie O'Brien, the audition had gathered 750 people. Katie Lee was a Muppets fan and did the audition process by renting one of the Muppet movies at a Blockbuster location and watching it. As Lee was also a fan of Rolf, she realized that she could do his voice. Although Lee accidentally forgot to transform her impression into a baby, she was cast. As Hank Sarian described her as one of the only people who really knew who Rolf was. Well, that's good. Henson's idea for its animation was to mix genres and ignore hard-to-fast rules. Characters and backgrounds were created by artists of Marvel Productions. Due to budget constraints, an idea was made by making Jeffrey Scott incorporate live-action footage and photographic backgrounds into the show to showcase reality of the imaginations. Film clips were also incorporated to encourage imagination and fantasy. The idea was well-liked, and it became one of the main concepts of the show, as it helped save money for animation. It was considered easy for Henson to secure the rights to films such as Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark, since he was friends with George Lucas and Steven Spielberg. Muppet Babies premiered on September 15, 1984 at 9 a.m. Eastern as part of the Saturday morning lineup on CBS. During the 1984-85 television season, the show competed with NBC's The Smurfs. For a brief run in the second season, the program became Muppet Babies and Monsters, and a second half hour was dedicated to a new show called Jim Henson's Little Muppet Monsters. This show featured live-action puppets and cartoons starring the adult Muppet characters. The program ran from September 14th to September 28th of 1985. At the time, the program faced competition with ABC's Ewoks and Star Wars Droids Adventure Hour. After 3 episodes, Jim Henson pulled the plug, despite there being 18 episodes. This was reportedly due to the animation suffering from being produced quickly and the characters being lost in translation from live action to animation, making the animation production harder for Marvel Productions to deliver full season's animated segments in time for airing. As a result, Henson and CBS was unhappy about the product. The show then reverted to 2 episodes of Muppet Babies. In the 1987-1988 television season, Muppet Babies was expanded to 3 episodes after CBS pulled Garbage Pail Kids before it aired due to the controversy. Between 1985 and 1991, Muppet Babies gained 12 awards from 27 nominations, including 4 consecutive Daytime Emmy Awards for Outstanding Animated Program. On August 1st of 1985, the show became the first recipient to receive an award for Outstanding Animated Program at the Daytime Emmy Awards. It continued to win the category until 1989, holding a record for the most wins in the category, tied with Arthur.
The winner is Jim Henson's Muppet Babies.
You've just given this award to a show that stars a pig, a singing bear, and a frog, but it's worth it. This year, 1985, is the biggest year in the history of animation, and we're real proud to be part of it. I'd like to thank Jim Henson, who started all this with his wonderful creations, and Michael Frith of his company, who decided to make them children. To Judy Price, who had the insight at CBS to make this a TV show, and my wonderful staff that surrounds us, all the producers and all the people at Marvel Productions and Henson Associates, our producer Bob Richardson, our writer Jeff Scott, our voice director and series executive Hank Soroyan. I've probably forgotten everybody. And to Lee Gunther, our production chief, who did not lock us up and throw away the key when he found out what it would take to do this show. Thank you.
In 1985, Jeffrey Scott received a Humanitas Prize for the first season episode 8 Take Away 1 Equals Panic, which earned him $10,000. I like that. 8 Take Away 1 Equals Panic. Muppet Babies was known to start a trend of relaunching popular cartoon characters as younger versions of themselves. This trend can be seen in numerous TV series such as A Pup Named Scooby-Doo, The Flintstone Kids, Tom and Jerry Kids, Jungle Cubs, based on the characters from Disney's The Jungle Book, and Baby Looney Tunes. On October 26, 2016, it was announced that a reboot of the series began production. As opposed to the traditional animation of the original show, the reboot used CGI and is targeted to children ages 4 to 7, with each episode consisting of 2 11-minute stories. Mr. Warburton, creator of Cartoon Network's codename Kids Next Door, served as the executive producer, while former SpongeBob SquarePants writer Eric Shaw served as the story editor. A reboot of the series premiered on Disney Junior on March 23rd of 2018. Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling is an American animated television series that originally aired on CBS Saturday mornings from September 14th, 1985 to October 18th of 1986, with reruns airing until June 27th, 1987. Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling was animated and produced by DIC Animation City. It featured animation adventures of popular WWF stars from the time, including its title character, Hulk Hogan. You know it, brother! And his group of face wrestlers fighting against a group of rogue heel wrestlers led by Rowdy Roddy Piper. The show followed cartoon archetypes concerning good characters triumphing over evildoers in wacky situations, typical of children's cartoons in the 1980s. Rarely referenced, wrestling was simply a device to determine the good guys from the bad guys. The wrestlers themselves appeared in the live-action segments of the show, but due to their busy travel schedules, they did not provide the voices for their animated counterparts. These were instead performed by professional voice actors. One reoccurring live-action segment was the music video for the cover of Land of a Thousand Dances, recorded by several WWF wrestlers for the wrestling album. Due to the show being animated and the longer production time that resulted, it often failed to keep pace with the events of the WWF at the time. This resulted in certain wrestlers turned heel, or in non-wrestling terms, a villain, in regular WWF programming, but remaining good guys on the cartoon and vice versa. Examples include Rowdy Roddy Piper, who was a heel when the show debuted, but became a face in the fall of 1986 despite remaining a bad guy in the cartoon, and Andre the Giant, who was a face in the fall of 1985 but turned heel in early 1987 despite remaining on the good guy's side through the series run. Additionally, the characters of Jimmy Superfly Snuka and Wendy Richter remained throughout the series run despite both having left the WWF in late 1985. WWE currently owns the right to the program. I don't even think there's a WWF anymore, is there? I don't know. I haven't watched wrestling since the 80s. Anyways, in April of 2015, WWE added the show to the WWE Network, making its premiere following the April 20th episode of the WWE Raw. So many W's. On July 24th of 2015, Hulk Hogan was fired by the WWE, and all references to Hulk Hogan, including Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling, were removed from the WWE Network. Hogan was later rehired, though the series did not return to the network. Hulk Hogan was the leader of the faces, or good guys, heroes, or protagonists, consisting of Junkyard Dog, Captain Louis Albino, Andre the Giant, Wendy Richter, Jimmy Superfly Snuka, Hillbilly Jim, and Tito Santana. Rowdy Roddy Piper was the leader of the heels, or the bad guys. Villains, or antagonists, consists of the Iron Sheik, Nikolai Volkov, the Fabulous Moolah, Big John Studd, and Mr. Fuji. Bobby the Brain Heenan and Mean Gene Ackerland appeared animated in a few episodes as well. The opening theme to Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling is the Hulk Hogan's theme, composed by Jim Steinman. It was also used as Hogan's ring entrance theme before being replaced with Real American by Rick Derringer. Steinman later reworked Hulk Hogan's theme into Ravishing, performed by Bonnie Tyler, and featured on her 1986 album Secret Dreams and Forbidden Fire. Ghostbusters, later called Filmation's Ghostbusters, is a 1986 American animated television series created by Filmation and distributed by Tribune Entertainment, serving as a sequel to Filmation's 1975 live-action television show, The Ghostbusters. It is not to be confused with Columbia Pictures' 1984 film Ghostbusters, or that film's subsequent animated television show, The Real Ghostbusters, which premiered 5 days later. When making their film, Columbia Pictures needed to obtain the rights to use the name from Filmation. The success of Columbia's unrelated film spurred Filmation to resurrect their own property, producing an animated series based on the characters from the earlier TV show. This animated series ran from September 8th to December 5th of 1986 in daytime syndication and produced 65 episodes. The series is technically called simply Ghostbusters, but home video releases use their name Filmation's Ghostbusters to avoid confusion. In the U.S., reruns of the show previously aired on CBN Cable, the Family Channel, Cubo's Cubo Night Owl Block. Okay, sure. From 2010 to 2013, and most recently on the Retro Television Network until 2015. Jake Kong Jr. and Eddie Spencer Jr. are the sons of the original Ghostbusters from the live-action comedy series of the same name. Tracy the Gorilla had worked with their fathers. Their headquarters, termed Ghost Command, is located in a haunted mansion nestled between a number of tall skyscrapers which resemble the World Trade Center's Twin Towers in New York City. They are supported by a number of secondary characters including Aunt Sabone, a talking skull phone, Skelevision, a talking skeleton television, Belfry, a pink talking bat, and Ghost Buggy Jr., their talking car. They occasionally enlist the aid of Futura, a time-traveling Ghostbuster from the future, and Jessica Ray, a local TV news reporter. Together, they have dedicated themselves to ridding the world of the evil ghost wizard Prime Evil and his cast of henchmen. Prime Evil's headquarters, termed the Haunt Quarters, which resembles the British Houses of Parliament, complete with a Big Ben-esque clock tower, is located in the fifth dimension. In a typical episode, Prime Evil uses his magical powers to open up a wormhole to enable one or more of his henchmen to complete a particular scheme that serves to help him take over the world. Like almost all 1980s Filmation cartoons, each episode closes with a segment describing a particular lesson that can be learned from the events of the episode. Skelevision, sometimes accompanied by Belfry, is the character most often employed in the role. From time to time, Jake Jr., Eddie Jr., or another protagonist would talk with Skelevision about the lesson. When Columbia Pictures began to work on the film Ghostbusters in 1984, producers overlooked the fact that Filmation had already created a live-action comedy series with that same name in 1975. Columbia agreed to license the name from Filmation for $608,000 plus 1% of the profits, holy moly, of which there were ostensibly none thanks to Hollywood accounting. This deal did not include giving Filmation the rights to make an animated series based on the film. After the film became a success, Filmation offered to make an animated series, but Columbia chose instead to give the contract to DIC. Filmation then made their own animated show based on their 1975 live-action sitcom. It was released just a few days ahead of DIC's series. DIC titled their own adaptation of the movie The Real Ghostbusters to distinguish it from the Filmation show. The Filmation show and the DIC show aired simultaneously, and this left audiences confused because they had similar titles and concepts. This confusion led to poor toy sales for the Filmation show. In retrospect, producer Lou Scheimer felt that it had been an error to produce a Ghostbusters show in direct competition to more popular Columbia show. And I was a kid around that time. I was a teen. 1984, I was 14 years old. I wasn't confused. I knew what both were. I knew what the real Ghostbusters were, the Ghostbusters the movie, and then the other Ghostbusters was some lame 70s show. We knew as kids. There was no confusion. BCI Eclipse LLC, under its Ink and Paint Classic Animation Entertainment label and under license from Entertainment Rights PLC, released the entire series in Region 1 in 2-volume sets in 2007. Each episode on BCI Ink and Paint's DVD releases of the 1986 animated series of Filmation's Ghostbusters was uncut, remastered, and in story continuity order. Each set also features extensive special features including interviews, commentary, image galleries, bonus episodes, and more. Unlike many of BCI Ink and Paint's R1 DVD releases of the Filmation in-house library, with the exception of 2 episodes, Tracy Come Back and Like Father Like Son, this DVD release appears to have been sourced from the original NTSC film prints. As of 2009, these releases have been discontinued and are out of print as BCI Eclipse ceased operations. TGG Direct LLC, holy abbreviations, Batman, released a single disc, the Best of Ghostbusters DVD, that contains 4 episodes, Mummy Dearest, Shades of Dracula, The White Whale, and Like Father Like Son. The disc was available at the Walmarts on a cardboard backing. Mill Creek Entertainment announced the re-release of the series on DVD. All right, we're just going to kind of skim over Fraggle Rock to Fraggle Rock the Animated Series because there's really nothing to touch too much on it, just that it did happen. It was a live-action series to an animated series. Fraggle Rock the Animated Series was an American animated children's television series based on the original live-action version of the same name created by Jim Henson. NBC aired this spin-off program on Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. Later, it moved it to 11 a.m. for one season during 1987. It was later shown in reruns on Disney Channel from May 5th, 1990 to June 1995. The animated series followed the same formula as the HBO original live-action series, including the same theme song but re-recorded with the cartoon character voice actors. Many episodes consisted of 2 15-minute stories, however, a few presented a single full 30-minute plot. The animated version carried on the tradition of original songs with at least one tune per episode, including a few recycled from the puppet version, such as Let Me Be Your Song. In its original run, the animated episodes were bookended by footage of the original puppet version of Uncle Traveling Matt introducing the show from Doc's workshop. The animated version of Fraggle Rock consisted of 13 episodes. The most noticeable difference is that, unlike the live-action version, the animated version of Doc is shown from the neck down, much like Nanny on Muppet Babies. The series was released on VHS in the UK by Palace Video. 2 tapes were released, each featuring 2 full episodes. The first 2 episodes were released in the UK on a single-disc DVD titled Dance Your Cares Away by Hit Entertainment in 2005. The show's first U.S. home media release was on January 19th of 2010 when Lionsgate Home Entertainment released the complete series on a 2-disc set. On July 11th, 2018, Sony Pictures Home Entertainment announced a 12-disc complete series Blu-ray set of the main Fraggle Rock series with all 13 episodes of the animated series to be included as well. It was released on September 25th of 2018, and they also released a separate 2-disc set of the animated series on the same day. 13 episodes. Didn't last very long, many moons ago. Not much to say about it, but it happened. The Completely Mental Misadventures of Ed Grimley is an American animated television series produced by Hanna-Barbera Productions and featuring Martin Short's fictional character Ed Grimley, with Short reprising his role as Grimley. The show aired on NBC from September 10th to December 3rd of 1988 for a single season of 13 episodes. The show is the only Saturday morning animated adaptation of both an SCTV character and a Saturday Night Live character, and the first Saturday morning cartoon featuring an SCTV cast member, later joined by Camp Candy, featuring John Candy, and Rick Moranis, Gravedale High. Guest stars on the show include Christopher Guest and SCTV alumni Eugene Levy and Dave Thomas. The show also features the voice of Rene Auberjonois, I can never pronounce his name, Odo from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Kenneth Mars, and Art Johnson. Though the show was not renewed for a second season, The Completely Mental Misadventures of Ed Grimley was later seen in reruns in 1996 on Cartoon Network's unnamed pre-Adult Swim era late-night programming block, which consisted of such shows as Space Ghost Coast to Coast and reruns of classic Looney Tunes shorts and Hanna-Barbera programming before it was rerun again on Boomerang. The live-action Count Floyd segments were also recycled for use in episodes of Cartoon Planet featuring many of the same characters as SGC2C and produced by the same team. Hanna-Barbera sponsored an Ed Grimley look-alike contest midway through the first season, which was won by 10-year-old Matt Mitchell from Des Moines, Iowa. I'll have to see if I can find that. MTV expressed interest in a second season, but budget issues shut down any further discussion. Episodes of the show often feature Ed Grimley and several adventures, which start out as mundane but turn very surreal and cartoonish, interspersed with science lessons from the amazing Gustav brothers, Roger and Emil, and a live-action segment with a scary story titled The Count Floyd Show, presented as a show within a show by Grimley's favorite television hosts, SCTV's Count Floyd, played by SCTV cast member Joe Flaherty. Grimley's fellow cartoon characters include Grimley's landlord Leo Freebus, voiced by Jonathan Winters, Leo's wife Deidre, voiced by Andrea Martin, his ditzy amateur actress neighbor, Ms. Malone, voiced by Catherine O'Hara. A female character by the name of Miss Malone did appear on the SNL version of Ed Grimley's sketch on the season 10 episode hosted by Alex Carraz, but Miss Malone was played by that episode's musical guest Tina Turner. And her little brother Wendell, voiced by Danny Cooksey. Ed owns a goldfish named Moby and a clever pet rat named Sheldon, voiced by Frank Welker. At the end of each episode, Ed would write in his diary about what happened in his day. This is very unusual. I didn't even know this thing existed until I made this video. It's pretty wacky and funny. Check it out. And there you have it, gals and guys. 10 more examples of live-action TV shows that were turned into Saturday morning cartoons. And I'll be delving into more in future videos, this subject or other subjects, so look out for those very, very soon. And if you could please like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments which of these stood out to you. And I'll be searching for more to make another video just like this one. There's still more out there. It's just a matter of hunting for them. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.